Why do some men appear strong on the outside, yet seem to be fighting invisible battles inside? What truly destroys a man, the world around him or the weight he carries in his mind? Why does he keep returning to what he knows hurts? If you're a man, you've lived through this, perhaps without realizing how deeply it shapes you. In the next few minutes, you'll uncover a truth no one has ever told you. The story begins in a cramped apartment on a quiet street, where Alex, a 37-year-old graphic designer, spends his nights scrolling through social media. He's the kind of guy who smiles in photos, but when his phone buzzes, his shoulders slump. He's surrounded by the glow of screens, the hum of a city that never sleeps, and a silent, unspoken pressure that feels heavier than any physical load. Alex's friends joke about his invisible armor, but he's never heard anyone explain why that armor feels so fragile. At the same time, across town, Maya, a therapist in her late 30s, sits in a sunlit office, listening to patients who talk about love, desire, and the invisible forces that pull them toward or away from each other. She has studied the subtle currents of human attraction, noticing that many people are unaware of how much of their energy is spent on attracting or repelling. In her practice, she sees how the same patterns repeat. A man who believes he is powerful yet feels drained, a woman who feels pulled toward someone who seems perfect but ultimately leaves her empty. The tension rises when Alex, after a particularly draining day, stumbles into a small, dimly lit bar to unwind. He meets a woman named Lila, whose eyes hold a quiet intensity. Their conversation is effortless, and for the first time in months, Alex feels a spark that feels real and not forced. Lila, sensing his guardedness, shares that she's also been wrestling with unseen forces that shape her attraction. Her words hit Alex like a revelation. He realizes that the invisible battles he fights are not just personal but part of a larger, almost mystical pattern of energy exchange. In this moment, the narrative shifts from individual struggle to a broader understanding. Alex and Lila begin to explore the idea that attraction is not just chemistry or coincidence. It's a dynamic interplay of energies, both visible and hidden. Their connection becomes a living experiment, a way to test the theory that the forces we ignore shape our lives more than we think. As they walk out of the bar into the night, the city lights flicker like distant stars, and Alex feels the first glimmer of hope that perhaps he can learn to manage the invisible currents that have long kept him trapped. The night pressed close around Alex as he stepped onto the cracked sidewalk, the glow of neon signs painting his shoulders in shifting hues. He paused, letting the city's hum seep into his bones. The experiment they had started in that cramped bar was still raw, a pulse that had begun to sync with the rhythm of the street. He felt, for the first time in a long while, the faint tremor of possibility, an invitation to learn how to steer the unseen currents that had always seemed to drag him down. Yet beneath that tentative hope, a deeper, darker current surged. Men are taught from childhood to swallow emotions, to let the world see only a stoic front. The silence that follows is often mistaken for strength, but it is a silent wrecking ball that erodes the soul. Alex remembered the nights he'd stared into mirrors, seeing a face that didn't quite match the man who walked into work, who laughed at jokes, who held his partner's hand. The reflection was a stranger, a silhouette that had been forced into a role that no longer felt authentic. It was like pushing your own soul into a dim, locked room and hoping it will never scream. The walls whispered, "You're fine," while the cracks beneath the floorboards held the weight of unspoken grief. He wondered when the first doubt had crept into his chest, when the realization that he could no longer trust anyone had settled like a stone. Had it been during a quiet Sunday, watching his brother's laughter echo in a house that felt too big? Or had it been in the silence after a fight, when words fell short and the air thickened with unshared pain? Men often fear failure more than suffering. The fear of failure is a shadow that lingers in every decision, a specter that says, if you try and fail, you'll lose everything. The fear of suffering is a quieter, subtler beast, a reminder that pain is part of being human. Alex felt both claws digging into his chest, each pulling him in opposite directions. He wondered why the society he lived in had built walls so high that men were taught to keep their hearts behind them. There was an uncomfortable truth about the male mind, a truth that most men keep hidden in the dark corners of their thoughts. It was a truth that whispered that the invisible forces shaping our lives are not always benevolent. The city lights flickered like distant stars, a reminder that even in darkness, there is light. Alex took a breath, feeling the weight of the world settle on his shoulders, and decided to step forward, to test the theory that by acknowledging the forces we ignore, we might finally break free from their grip. The night air pressed against Alex's cheeks, a cold reminder that the city's pulse was relentless. He walked past neon signs that flickered like distant stars, each one a silent witness to the unspoken weight he carried. It was then that the whisper of the theory he'd clung to sharpened into a clear voice. What really consumes a man is not the problem. It's the silence. The words landed like a stone in the hollow of his chest, and he felt the familiar ache of unresolved thoughts tightening around his heart. Alex had learned, through years of quiet observation, that the male brain was wired for solutions, not for feelings. When emotions swelled, the mind would retreat into a fortress of logic, shutting out the softer, more vulnerable parts. In that retreat, the silence grew louder, echoing with unspoken grief and frustration. He remembered nights spent staring at the ceiling, pretending to be fine while inside a storm of doubt and fear. The silence gnawed at him, corroding the very foundation of his spirit more than any external failure could. He paused at an intersection where a streetlight hummed, casting a pool of yellow light over a lone figure in a hoodie. The stranger's eyes were hollow, reflecting a similar void that Alex had felt. "You look like you've been holding something heavy," Alex said, his voice tentative. The stranger's lips trembled, and he finally spoke. "I've been carrying the weight of unspoken words. It's a slow, relentless erosion." The conversation unfolded like a slow burn. The stranger confessed that most men live with feelings never verbalized, and that this quiet erosion was more destructive than any public failure. The truth struck Alex with the force of a sudden thunderclap. He realized that his own silence had been a silent accomplice, a quiet partner in the slow decay of his resilience. "You've been pretending to be fine?" the stranger asked, and Alex nodded, the weight of his own deceit suddenly clear. The realization hit him with a painful clarity. The true strength of a man is not in enduring everything, but in recognizing what quietly destroys him. The words echoed in the dimly lit street, and Alex felt a strange sense of relief, as if a dam had broken, allowing the flood of feelings to flow free. With a newfound resolve, Alex turned away from the streetlight and stepped deeper into the night. Each step was lighter, no longer burdened by the oppressive silence that had once consumed him. He understood now that acknowledging the unseen forces and confronting the silence was the first step toward breaking free. The city's light seemed less distant, and the path ahead, though still shrouded in shadows, felt more open than it had ever been. Alex stepped forward, the city's distant hum turning into a steady pulse beneath his feet. The darkness no longer felt like a blanket. It was a cloak that allowed him to move with purpose. Each breath drew in the night's cool air, and each exhale let go of a piece of the weight that had once anchored him to the street lamp's glow. He realized that the silence he had feared was simply a stage, an empty theater where his own thoughts could finally take center stage. As he turned a corner, a low, resonant voice cut through the air. It wasn't a man speaking, but the echo of his own doubts, amplified by the walls of the alley. The voice whispered, "You're not alone in this fight. Every man carries a war that no one sees." Alex felt a shiver travel down his spine, not from fear, but from the sudden clarity that his struggle was not solitary. The unseen battles that raged inside him were part of a larger tapestry, threads woven by generations of silent warriors, each fighting their own invisible battles. Some had found ways to win, others had not, and the line between the two was thinner than he had imagined. In the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, he met a figure, a man in a worn coat, eyes reflecting the same weary resolve that Alex now carried. The stranger spoke of psychologia occulta, a field that delved into the hidden currents of the mind. He explained that understanding these currents could transform fear into strength, making the invisible war visible and, consequently, conquerable. The conversation was brief, but it left a seed of possibility in Alex's chest, a seed that would grow into a new determination. The night pressed on, and Alex felt the city's lights begin to stitch themselves into a map. The path ahead was still shrouded, yet the shadows no longer seemed oppressive. He understood that every step forward was a declaration. He was no longer a passive observer of his own life. He was an active participant, willing to confront the darkness, to name the battles, and to seek the knowledge that could help him win. If this narrative has resonated with you, if the idea that each man carries an invisible war feels true, then stay with us. There is more to uncover about the male psyche, truths that have long been left unspoken. Continue your journey with us. The next chapters hold insights that will challenge what you think you know about yourself.